Welcome to Blue Talks.
Thank you so much for having me today here at UCLA. I am so excited to tell you about my biggest mistake, my biggest mess up in life that I wish I knew then, what I knew now, what I'm going to share with you today, because I hope to be able to prevent even an ounce of the heartache, the agony, or even just save you time to fast forward you into the happiest chapters of your life. Before I get started, I want to ask you a question. And I want you to ponder this as I talk. Just think how it applies in your own life. But I want to know, what will you do when the worst thing happens? Because bad things happen, right? Life is hard. Happens to all of us, and it could be the absolute rock bottom that I'm going to tell you about, or it could just be the day-to-day struggles. But what are you going to do? Are you going to run away, hide, lie, point fingers, blame? Just think about it. So my story begins with my biggest fear. We all have fears. And my biggest fear from childhood onwards, I actually don't have memories in my life where this fear wasn't overwhelming. And it's the fear of being alone, the fear of abandonment, the fear of being left or not chosen. And particularly as a child, it was with my mom. And I love my dad, but for whatever reason, I was so attached to my mom. And there is one memory in particular. It's ingrained in my brain. And when I think about it, even now, it can bring tears to my eyes, because those memories are those strong core memories from childhood. You know how we have those images imprinted in our minds? This is one for me. And my mom was going bowling. So I'm going to let you do the math, but I was born in the 70s and I was raised in the 80s, and my mom was on a bowling team. And she had the bag and the shoes and the whole thing. And she was leaving me with a babysitter. And I had never had anything happen to me that I recall. I don't remember trauma. I had a really good childhood. Babysitters were all great. But she was leaving me with a babysitter, and I did not want her to leave. I was petrified. And I can remember standing at the basement door, like my fists in my mouth, the snot, the tears running down my face, begging her to stay, as I always did. And of course, she went bowling for what, like an hour or two? But it's still, to this day, sits right here. So think about what that is for you, right? We have these memories from our life that we carry with us. So fast forward into my formative years as a young girl starting to date, those courageous boys that were brave enough to date me, because as you can imagine, I hung on with a death grip. I was the definition of clingy, because what would it say about me, or what would it mean to me if they chose to leave, if they didn't want to be in that relationship anymore? It scared me. And then I got married. So it was in my first marriage. Yes, I am divorced. I'm the relationship coach that has been divorced, but I'm happily remarried to my husband, Justin. So grateful for him. I call him my favorite husband. But I am curious if you know the statistics on divorce. I love talking about this because it makes me feel better about myself, right? Statistics today say that more than 50% of marriages end in divorce. 50%. So I want to ask you, raise your hand if you're divorced, right? Maybe separated, raise it, keep raising it, right? Or maybe you want to be divorced, right? I dare you to raise your hand, especially if you're here with your partner. I dare you, right? And that's the thing, it's hard. Marriage is hard. That's why I have a job, thank God. But it was in that first marriage where my anxiety from day one was at its highest. It should have been my first clue, really, looking back. But it's that anxiety that led me here today, that led me to realizing way too late, because he already left me, that marriage is done, but realizing my biggest mistake, my biggest mess up. And it started with that anxiety. Now, has anybody felt anxiety? I won't keep asking questions, but have you ever felt anxious? Maybe even right now, right? So many of us, we know that feeling, and we might call it anxiety. We might call it fear, nervousness, worry, stress. It's discomfort in our body, right? And when I felt it in my marriage, probably in every other aspect of my life as well, my instinct was to try to control everything around me, particularly my ex-husband. Familiar? If all those people that raise their hands who've been divorced, I know you know what I'm talking about, right? And we look outside of ourselves and we try and micromanage the heck out of everything around us. Because it feels better. It temporarily calms that inner angst. That discomfort that we feel in our body goes away. But it's just that. It is temporary. It's an illusion. It's like a Band-Aid. We're not really dealing with the problem. So here's the thing. I want you to listen, because this is the important part about what I have to say today. The only thing we can control in this lifetime is ourselves. We can control our thoughts, our actions, and our reactions in the present moment, right here, right now, today. We can forget about 10 years ago, yesterday, even 5 seconds ago, because it's done. We can't change anything that's already happened. But think about how often you sit in your mind and you spin about what you said, what you did, or even more importantly, what he or she said or did, that how they wronged you, and we blame and we focus on it. And we're wasting our energy because we can't change anyone else and we can't change the past. But yet, we spin and then talk about anxiety, right? The only thing we have control over is ourselves in the present moment, right here, right now. Our happiness is entirely an inside job. It's up to us. When I realized that, it's like my head exploded in the best of ways. In the best ways, because I realized that I could change it. That I didn't have to let it happen again. I didn't have to go through what I went through again, because I'd been doing that probably my whole life, but definitely in my first marriage, entirely trying to control all the things except for myself. Now, don't let it be lost on you. Looking within, having the courage, because it takes courage to do the inside work and to figure out who you are and what you want and to find that clarity. It will absolutely transform your relationships and your marriages. And if you're single, it's going to transform your future relationships. But it changes everything. Think about what we all want. What do you want? We want happiness. We want maybe a happy relationship, a healthy relationship that lasts, where we don't get divorced and we're not fighting. We want our kids to be happy if we have children. We want money. Money allows us to buy and do the things we want to do. We want business success. we want to travel, you name it, right? These are things that so many of us want. And the trick is this one single thing. It's looking within. When we do the work, the inside work, all of those things start to come easily. And this is why. It's because we're energy. And when we do the work of looking within and self-reflection and owning our stuff, our energy shifts, right? We vibrate at a different vibration when we're happy, when we're confident, when we feel loved, and when things are happening for us. And when we vibrate at that level, we become magnetic. Things, people, opportunities start coming out of the woodwork, and sometimes we didn't even realize we needed it to happen. That happens when we do the inside work, when we stop blaming and pointing fingers at the things around us that we want to change, and we decide to change the one single person that we actually can change. Now, my husband, my favorite husband that I spoke of before, Justin, he said to me, when I was practicing my talk and telling him what I was going to talk about today, he said, but what's your biggest mess up? So I don't want you to not hear me today. My biggest mess up that I want you to learn from is that I was looking outside of myself entirely to feel better, to calm that discomfort. Every time I felt uncomfortable, I wanted something outside of myself to change. So I want to come back to the question I asked at the very beginning, and it's, what will you do when the worst thing happens to you? When your husband leaves you? When you're having a bad day? When you don't get that promotion? Whatever it is, what will you do? Will you run away? Will you blame everybody else? Or will you rise? Will you look within, self-reflect, own your stuff, do the tough work of figuring out who you are and what you want and grow your confidence? Because I promise you this, the other side of facing those fears is amazing. Thank you. If you want to reach out to do some coaching work or for speaking, please scan the QR code or follow me on Facebook, and I would love to connect.